Hello and welcome to Hopeful Consciousness. It's day 12 of my 2-week challenge to help you have a spiritual and awakened moment. So the next thing that sort of came to my mind after the law of attraction talk yesterday is some of Joe Dispenza's work. Now, I was listening to his audiobook, Becoming Supernatural, while I was actually doing Ryan's Super Genius course. Just on the commute there and things like that. And interestingly, one of the other people that I sat down and did a bit of intuition work was listening to the exact same book, just a little bit further along. So very strange little synchronicity there. His book basically goes into detailing how ordinary people can do supernatural things. And I found this quite sort of interesting, liberating as well. Again, it reinforced that the science is actually backing up a lot of all these old accounts of healings and things like that. I mean, Joe's story himself, he was in a motorcycle accident where he got hit by a truck or lorry and was basically in a situation where part of his spine was broken. And he was told, as you might expect, that he's probably never going to fully recover, probably never going to walk properly again, and all these things. And he'd been studying this for some time, all the powers of using your mind to affect how we are. So he actually put that into practice himself. So every day, you know, even though he would go through some really dark, depressing times, you know, when he's got all the medical doctors around him telling him this grim story about how he's going to be, his life's going to be limited. He had his friends and family telling him, you know, you should give up your medical practice. Don't worry, you know, you can't maintain that while having these sort of injuries. So every day he would go and visualize in his mind, literally reconstructing the bones in his spine and reconstructing his entire spine and spinal cord and repairing all the damage there. And, you know, he said it was an arduous process. You know, his mind would keep throwing rubbish in the way. The same thing that you get when you try and meditate for like one of the first times. And even now, you know, I still get that. Your mind just wanders off on its own little tangent, especially if something troubling's happened in the day. And you can sit there for hours, often just off in your own thoughts, in your head, doing sort of loop-the-loops. And he said, you know, this was a hard process for him. He literally wanted to get to the point where he could run an entire surgical procedure, basically, to correct his spine in one sort of straight sitting. And a procedure like that would take sort of like in the order of 8 hours. So he tried over and over again to get this to happen. His mind kept throwing these little doubts and things in his way. He said eventually something strange happened. After, you know, weeks of me telling my mind, you know, I'm in charge, stop it with the monkey talk. Eventually, it kind of got to a point where it listened, and it was just like, okay, I'm just not going to interfere, you do your thing. And he finally had a moment where he was able to do the entire surgery, visualizing in his mind, in one complete sitting. And he said after that, he started to recover from his injury. And today, he's up and about walking, you know, running seminars on stage all day. He said he has no problems with his back whatsoever. And he goes through and gives some really interesting examples of stuff that we would call supernatural in his book. So another thing that really fascinated me, one of the stories in there was a young girl that had a heart transplant. And what actually happened is she'd had the heart transplant of someone that they'd just basically discovered someone had been out walking, I think, and just sort of discovered the body of this person. She had this person's heart. But shortly after that was discovered, she started getting all these horrible nightmares and things like that of someone brutally kind of murdering her. Not a lovely topic, I agree. But she started getting these memories and things like that come through. And she worked with a police artist and started to reconstruct the image of the person that murdered the donor of this heart. And she actually went through and, using the image there, the police searched their database and they actually managed to solve the murder of her host that her donor she had received her heart from. Absolutely amazing. The guy confessed when confronted by it and explained the whole situation. Yeah, really remarkable. There's numerous accounts of, people having transplants. Another one he talks about where suddenly you get cravings for certain types of food, and then when you speak to the family members of the person who's donated the organ, strange things, that was their favourite food, and odd things like that, where you've got these organs almost carrying a memory of the other person into that environment. Throughout the book, there's numerous examples of how you can use these sort of visualization techniques, a bit like the law of attraction I was talking about, on a sort of health front, to visualize yourself in a healthy condition, to visualize the things you want in your mind. A lot of his talks are about letting go of the predictable past. So the stories you run over and over in your head about your past and things like that, you're actually creating your future by rerunning the same stories from your past, and you're experiencing the same effects, which leads you to take the same actions and the same behaviors. So you're actually writing your future from examples in your past, certainly ones that might not serve you particularly well. So yeah, he talks a lot about that, about you almost need to, during the course of some of these meditations, forget who you are, lose your identity in the kind of general awareness and consciousness of the situation. So he talks about the quantum field as well. So it's almost like if you're in a physical world, so for example, in his situation, doctors couldn't go in and fix his spine. The procedure from a surgical point of view just couldn't be done. So he was left with little option, but rather than actually fix it in this physical world, he went into the realms of the quantum, he says, where, quantum physics says that everything is possible until you observe it, and then you kind of narrow down, and that's the reality of it. It's the observation that makes the possibility sort of pluck into existence and real. So that's exactly as they observe atoms, and you've got the electrons and things spinning around inside. It's only at the point of measurement that they tell you where they are, but then they can't also tell you where they're going and the speed and direction, things like that. You can't observe it all at the same time. Very interesting stuff with the quantum physics. And yeah, he looks into that. It's basically a process of almost letting go of your whole identity and just becoming one with this infinite awareness and consciousness. And then from there, you can almost cherry pick and pluck out, this is what I want my future to be. In his case, it was sort of like a healthy body, fully able to walk around and things like that. So by visualizing that over and over again, you are observing, you're collapsing the wave function and creating that reality. Similar stuff to what I was talking about yesterday with the laws of attraction. Now, he goes on and talks quite a lot about brainwave states and things like that, and goes through the different levels of brainwaves, showing that in a waking moment, we're in, say, beta brainwave frequencies, if you're measuring. Then when you get to a slightly rested state, say you're watching TV on the sofa, you would be in an alpha brainwave state. And then right down to that moment just before you're about to fall off into sleep, you're in this sort of suggestible zone called the theta brainwave frequencies. And this is where the kind of the realms of hypnosis and where suggestions into your subconscious mind can really be powerfully placed in there. And finally off into delta brainwave frequencies, which is basically sleep. He does also then talk about gamma frequencies, which is more to do with activating the pineal gland, where you get almost like a super awareness state. So above beta, which is your kind of, alert, doing stuff every day, you come into like a super alertness mode where you're, aware of so many things simultaneously. And this is sort of a gamma state that he says often happens when you have these interesting meditation experiences and activate your pineal gland. Yeah, very interesting stuff. But it kind of ties in as well with a lot of what Bruce Lipton talks about, in that a child up to the age of 7 is in this sort of theta brainwave state, which is why they're kind of always, usually fairly happy. They're not running their programs of their subconscious yet. They're still assimilating those programs in this hypnotic state. And so to really get to the crux of how to help people have a sort of transformative experience, because we run most of our day out of our subconscious. Literally 5% of our day is run out of our conscious mind, and the rest of it is just the programs that we're running subconsciously in the background. So you might want to drive to work and do these things, but most of that pattern is just running pre-stored stuff from your subconscious mind that you don't even think about it. You can sort of be walking into work, about to sit at your desk, and you're like, I can't remember the journey here really. It all fades into the background a bit because your subconscious mind was dealing with that side of things. Consciously, you might have been listening to a radio station or something like that, and you've forgotten about the drive completely. So making real lasting change is more about how you can tap into that subconscious mind and make the changes there, so that in the background, when you're running stuff constantly, the things that are running constantly are more beneficial for you. I'll just give you one more final example of one of the really weird things that Joe's book talks about, just to highlight the power of your mind and show you that we are these amazing beings. Your mind can't really distinguish that well between a dream and reality, to the point of which you can actually do a sporting exercise in your mind, and you will develop the same or almost the same skills as if you'd done it in real life. So I think another one of the examples was basketball players. So he took 3 groups of people. First one, for a few months, they basically didn't play basketball. And as you would expect, their skill level kind of slowly started to decline from not having played. He then took a second group and asked them to sit there and every couple of days, I think it was, play basketball in their minds for 30 minutes a day, and almost having that, visualizing the, practice, sort of dribbling, not dribbling, it's that's football, but, slam dunking and all kinds of, passing the ball and, the equivalent of dribbling in basketball. And he was basically going through all of those steps. They were going through all those steps in their mind. And they found that comparing that to another group of basketball players that had actually spent the same amount of time actually physically practicing on a court, there was very little difference between the two, between the group that practiced in their mind and the group that practiced by physically doing it. And that's just amazing. And there's the same effect has happened with, weightlifters. So this is bizarre. So you think you need to physically lift those weights to gain the muscle to do it. Well, actually, they're exactly the same effect as the basketball situation. People that stay at home and visualize in their mind that half an hour session in the gym where they're pumping iron have almost similar effect to that of a physical experience. That's just amazing. And they're not physically moving or doing anything. Their mind is controlling their reality. It goes a bit back to what I was talking about we are kind of generated through a source energy. So they're telling that they're in their feedback loop back to this source energy. They're basically telling their physical representation of themselves that, hey, I've been pumping on for a little bit, and they'll gain the muscle mass according to it. Now that sounds freaky, you know, someone that hasn't lifted a weight, has just practiced in their mind, is gaining muscle mass. What's going on there? It shows you how little we know really about the power of the mind. There's so much more to be discovered by it, and just how some of these feats of supernatural abilities are possible by everyday people. So yeah, I hope you join me for tomorrow, day 13, and I look forward to seeing you there. Cheers.